You did something well, something genuinely good. Someone noticed and said so directly, without prompting, without any reason to exaggerate. And somewhere between hearing those words and the moment that followed, something inside you quietly rejected them. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small internal movement, a redirect, a dismissal, a voice that arrived faster than gratitude and said, "They do not really know," or "I just got lucky," or "Wait until they see the parts I am hiding." And here is why that moment matters far more than most people ever stop to examine. The habit of quietly dismantling your own confidence is not a humility reflex, and it is not modesty, and it is not an accurate reading of your actual limitations. It is a psychological pattern running below conscious awareness that shapes every career decision you make, every relationship you allow yourself to fully enter, every opportunity you talk yourself out of before anyone else gets the chance to, and every version of your life that stays permanently in the planning stage because something keeps making the real attempt feel slightly out of reach. If you have ever sabotaged something good before it could disappoint you, talked yourself out of a room you had every right to be in, or felt genuinely more comfortable with failure than with sustained success, this is going to explain exactly what is running underneath that, and why it has been running for much longer than you probably realized. There is a specific way this pattern gets described when it gets described at all. People call it imposter syndrome and move on quickly, as if naming it is the same as understanding it. They say things like, "You are too hard on yourself," or "just be more confident," as though confidence is a decision that can be made once, and held permanently without any understanding of why it keeps dissolving. Friends watch someone consistently capable consistently underestimate themselves and eventually stop arguing because the argument never seems to land anywhere permanent. And the person themselves often develops a private explanation, that they are simply realistic, that they are just being careful, that the confidence other people seem to carry so easily must be built on something they themselves are missing. What almost never gets said is this: the quiet, consistent destruction of one's own confidence is not a personality trait. It is not an accurate self-assessment, and it is not evidence that the person was right to doubt themselves all along. It is a learned psychological process with a specific origin and a specific mechanism. And understanding that mechanism is the only thing that actually changes it. What we're actually talking about is one of the most extensively documented and least honestly discussed psychological patterns in behavioral science. The internalized habit of self-sabotaging confidence before external failure gets the chance to do it first. Researchers in cognitive psychology, self-concept theory, and developmental neuroscience have studied this pattern across decades, across cultures, across income levels, and educational backgrounds, and they consistently find the same thing. It is not about capability. It is almost never about capability. It is about a belief system operating below the level of conscious thought that has quietly decided what this person is and is not allowed to sustainably be. There is far more structure underneath this than most people ever reach when they try to understand why their confidence keeps collapsing from the inside. Psychologist Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania developed a foundational framework called learned helplessness, the documented psychological state in which a person, after repeated experiences where their actions did not produce the expected positive outcome, begins to stop trying in ways that extend far beyond the original context of failure. But the inverse pattern is equally documented and equally consequential. When a person experiences enough early environments where confidence was met with punishment, where standing out produced criticism, where success generated envy or ridicule, or raised expectations that felt impossible to maintain, the brain does not simply note that specific situation as dangerous. It generalizes. It builds a broader rule. Visible confidence in me produces bad outcomes, and it enforces that rule quietly and automatically across every new context, long after the original environment that taught it has been left behind. Columbia University psychologist Carol Dweck's research on self-theory and confidence adds a second critical layer. Her studies on fixed versus growth mindsets found something precise and disturbing about people who secretly undermine their own progress. Many of them were praised early in life not for effort, but for being naturally smart, naturally talented, naturally gifted. That specific kind of praise, identity-based rather than process-based, creates a fragile confidence that requires constant protection. Because if the good outcome proves natural ability, then a bad outcome proves its absence. And a brain that has learned to equate performance with identity will begin avoiding genuine challenge altogether. Not to be lazy, but because genuine challenge is the only place where the identity built on effortless ability is actually at risk of being disproven. The self-sabotage is not irrational. It is the brain protecting the most vulnerable belief it carries about who this person fundamentally is. For most people living inside this pattern, the construction began early and quietly. It rarely announced itself. Sometimes it was a household where ambition was subtly discouraged, where reaching too high was treated as naive, where wanting more than what the family had felt vaguely disloyal or embarrassing. Sometimes it was a school environment where being visibly capable made you a target rather than a leader, and shrinking became the safer social strategy. Sometimes it was a parent whose own unfulfilled ambitions made a child's emerging confidence feel threatening, rather than worth celebrating. Sometimes it was simpler and more erosive than any single cause. Just the accumulated experience of having good things not last, of having confidence feel temporary and dangerous to hold onto too firmly, because it always seemed to precede a fall. The nervous system learned to get ahead of the fall, to begin the dismantling process internally before the external world could do it publicly. Preemptive self-doubt is not weakness. In the environment where it was developed, it was precision protection. It kept the person from the particular pain of being seen reaching and then being seen failing. It kept expectations manageable. It kept disappointment predictable. The problem is that it also kept everything else small. This deserves to be said plainly. This is not a character weakness. It is not evidence of actual inadequacy hiding behind a confident surface. And it is not something that only affects people who genuinely lack ability or achievement. Some of the most objectively capable people alive are running this pattern at full strength, quietly dismantling their own foundation every time it gets solid enough to be noticeable. Neither this pattern nor its absence says anything about a person's worth or their actual ceiling. Different people, shaped by different early environments and different relationships with visibility and success, develop different relationships with confidence and what it is safe to carry. There is no judgment in observing the pattern. There is only the observation. Here is the counterintuitive layer. The people who secretly destroy their own confidence are very often, not always, but significantly often, among the most accurate evaluators of quality in their field. Because they have spent years scrutinizing their own work with unusual intensity, they developed a genuine and finely calibrated eye for the gap between good and exceptional. They are not delusional about standards. They see clearly. The paradox is this: the same precision that makes their self-assessment harsh also makes their actual output, when they do allow it to fully exist, unusually careful and unusually strong. The hidden strength of chronic self-doubt is often extraordinarily high standards applied to real work. The quiet cost is that the work itself appears far less often than it should because the person keeps pulling it back before it reaches anyone who could benefit from it. The world consistently receives less from people running this pattern than they are actually capable of giving. And so does the person themselves. If you recognize yourself anywhere in this, here is what is simply and plainly true. You are not broken. You are not a person of limited ability who has somehow avoided being found out. You are a person whose confidence was taught to make itself small in environments that required smallness, and that teaching has outlived every environment that originally justified it. The doubt you carry is not an accurate measurement of your actual capacity. It is a habit, and habits, unlike ceilings, can change. Your experience makes complete sense from the inside out. The self-dismantling is not irrational given what built it. It is simply no longer necessary in the way it once was. And the distance between knowing that intellectually and feeling it consistently is exactly where the real work lives. If you want to start interrupting this pattern, not eliminating self-awareness, not replacing honest evaluation with hollow affirmation, but creating a genuine crack in the automatic dismantling process, here is the one shift that actually moves something real. The next time you accomplish something and the internal voice arrives to explain it away, do not argue with it and do not agree with it. Simply write down the 3 specific actions you took that produced the outcome. Not the talent, not the luck, the decisions and the effort. What you are doing is building an evidence base that the pattern cannot easily dismiss. Because it is not about how you feel about yourself, it is about what you actually did. Over time, that record becomes a counter-narrative the brain can access when the dismantling voice arrives first. It sounds small, it works in ways that feel slow, and then suddenly do not. If this reached something real in you, there is more worth understanding about how this pattern shapes the specific opportunities you allow yourself to pursue, how it operates inside your closest relationships, and what happens to your sense of self when something genuinely goes well and you find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop rather than simply receiving what you earned. That architecture extends further into your daily life than most people ever trace it. And understanding it fully, not to fix yourself, but to finally see yourself accurately, is the kind of thing that changes not just your confidence, but what your confidence allows you to build.